We're back. We are back. It's Henry Weston's old mate, The Pod, en français. Bonjour, Stuart.
Bonjour, Philippe. Ça va, monsieur?
Yeah, okie dokie. Thank you. You've been away. You've been enjoying the fun of the slopes. How are you? Keeping well?
I've been away and had a fantastic week, and I've come back and got. I can't call it man flu because I'm sitting up, and we all know man flu makes us bedridden. I have got the lurgy. It's not COVID, but apart from that, I'm really good. Fantastic week away. And I'm unable to go to work for the last couple of days because of this blooming illness, but I've tried to keep a positive mindset, Phil.
That's good to hear.
And yeah, good to be sitting down this evening, even if I sound a bit croaky. And I'm now looking at myself, I realise that I probably should be carp fishing on a muddy riverbank somewhere with this get up.
Yeah, well, we're not even going to try to explain the camouflage outfit and then the summer background for those people that are watching. The forestry background for those people watching on YouTube. But if you're listening as part of the podcast, just kind of Stu is a floating head. That's all we've got.
A bald one at that.
The last time we spoke was with Adam, wasn't it?
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, and I think we had a good reaction to that. I think obviously Adam shared the links across his networks, which was great. But I think feedback overall has been really, really positive.
Yeah, it has, Phil. And I've actually just through that we've received a couple of emails from a couple more guests who are going to get on that episode. Sort of hit a lot of people, reached a lot of people. We've actually got a guy from America. He's going to come. I'm going to have a chat with him about greenkeeping, but he was a mental health within greenkeeping. But the episode with Adam was he bumped into it on my social medias. But it's amazing how far our little podcast can stretch just with a bit of sort of social media interaction. But Adam, as a guest, I mean, he was fantastic, wasn't it?
I thought so.
To see his Twitter, he's keeping up with his daily posts, his motivational posts, and he's sort of running half marathon distances at the minute. Not every day, but it's great to see. And hopefully we'll be able to do some work with Adam and the It Starts Monday crowd going forward. Would be excellent.
Yeah, no, it should. That's part of the aspiration.
Yeah.
Cool. So today we have come up with a theme to talk about failure, and I guess not necessarily in the negative sense, but we'll obviously talk about it in that way. But this was your brainchild to talk about failure on the podcast. So what was the driver? What started that conversation moving around in your head about bringing?
Be perfectly honest, I was having a run. Running through the woods, channeling my inner Bear Grylls, listening to Bear Grylls on a podcast. And I'm not a huge Bear Grylls fan. I mean, I like his work, but if he was talking with Jake and Damien on the High Performance podcast, number one in the charts, probably we're close behind him in number 240 or something. But within their conversation that wasn't based on this theme, but Bear Grylls mentioned how in modern society, or potentially in society forever, we are held up based on our positive achievements or all the good things that we do, which is great because doing good things is a good thing. But he then mentioned it doesn't get talked about so much, that it's the failures in life that we learn from and can potentially learn the most from. And it got me to thinking that for in my younger years as a reasonably talented sportsman and a reasonably talented greenkeeper, that's open to discussion, and reasonably good at most things I did, I was always held in reasonably high regard in my social circles because I was good at a few things. But now, through my alcoholism and my addiction, which I'm not for 1 minute going to say was a good thing, nearly dying and nearly drinking myself to death wasn't a good thing. But I think that is now what defines me as a person, and allows me to do things like this with you, and allows us to do some fundraising in the small amounts. And it allows us to help others and get people like Adam on the podcast to share his story and reach, 300, 400 people on YouTube, which to me is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So I just thought a discussion about how failure isn't necessarily a negative, and not winning in a sporting sense, talking Premier League, not winning isn't ideal, is it? Because there is financial ramifications, people's jobs are on the line. But really, my team, Manchester United, I'd like to think they're learning a lot from this current season they're having. It doesn't look like they are. But there is so much to be learned from failing or not quite reaching those goals you set. And as we discussed in the previous podcast, that goal setting, the goals have to be attainable, but there has to be a certain amount of effort, doesn't there, to get there? Because otherwise they're not really goals. If I could get up in the morning and achieve something in 5 minutes, it's not really a goal.
Yeah.
So yeah, just thought that's where it came from. So we can thank, the chief scout, Mr. Bear Grylls, for this one.
Okay. Thank you, Bear. Okay, so and I think you've touched on a few really interesting points in terms of kind of school days. I think which there is some good stuff to get stuck into there, but also kind of the sporting analogy really does draw out that we celebrate winners instantly.
Yeah.
And we are impatient with people on a journey. And I think, things like the Winter Olympics that we're watching at the moment, if you come fifth and you crash out in whatever, ski cross or whatever, nobody cares. Nobody's interested until you come back and do something interesting. And actually, that was exemplified this week with, what's her name? Jacobellis. Do you remember?
Yes.
16 years ago.
I watched the YouTube video yesterday.
Yeah, so she was cocksure 16 years ago, did a trick on the final jump. She was miles ahead. I think it was the Turin Olympics, and crashed. And she came fourth, didn't even get a medal. And everyone was like, failure. And failure on your terms, because you decided you were going to flick your back heel out and you were going to, try and win in style, and you blew it. And then 16 years later, age of 36, you can do the maths there, Stu. That's an easy one. She wins the same event, having gone through all that adversity. And just the picture there is that the winning came as a result of a journey for her. And would you, how much personal growth was there from the cocksure 20-year-old trying to flick a cocky move to the person she is today? How much has she grown and developed, and how much more and we'll never know the answer to this, how much more does the gold medal mean this week than if she had have got it in Turin 16 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, like you say, we will never know, but I'm sure she will, be able to reflect on that time period. And it might be easier to reflect now that she's got the gold medal. Mm-hmm. And had she not won that gold medal, it's another conversation. It's a fairy tale, really, isn't it? But you have to think that being able to, she must be some character type to be able to continue for 16 years. And again, you could pose the question that would she have been competing at this Olympics had she picked up that gold medal at 20? And because I'm sure she'd have had a couple more Olympics in her, but that might have defined her at the age of 20 rather than what is now defining her now as what is she, seen as a success story out of failure. But really, fourth in the Winter Olympics in 2006 in Turin is still fourth best in the world. But that's not how society looks at things, is it? We know that. The Champions League final every year, whether it's a close game or not, if it's a 4-3 or a 7-0, that team that loses the final by one goal having gone through 6 to 7 months of qualifying games to get there with outstanding performances, is still seen as a failure. That 6 months is still not seen as successful in the eyes of society. And we all know that, you know, these managers and sportsmen, their jobs are kept safe by winning and performing well and earning sponsors and the club money. But I would like to see a lot more emphasis, possibly. I don't think it ever will. It's a pipe dream, really. But all that work that goes into making a final, or, you know, the pinnacle of anything, could be the pinnacle of mine or your week, you know, in our little worlds. So yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to just to kind of set the scene really around, because you said something about Jacobellis in terms of her character in order to go from kind of Turin to Beijing, and that journey, and it kind of sparked a thing in my head around, there is some research around this, and the certain type of people tend to succeed, and it's not necessarily, you know, the most talented or the people with the greatest opportunity or the wealth or anything like that. Of course, some of that helps, but
Yeah.
mindset more than anything is the thing that drives people to certain levels of success.
Yeah.
There was a great piece of research done by a lady called Carol Dweck in the States. I think she was out of Stanford or Harvard University, and she's got a book that I've read, but it was cited in another book that I picked up, which was Matthew Syed's Bounce.
Right.
And she essentially ran this experiment of a class full of primary school children, split them down the middle. They all get the same test, but the response that they get, basically she's going to give them a test to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the response that they get, one half of the class is going to get one type of response, and the other half of the class is going to get another type of response, regardless of their score. Okay,
Right.
so Group A, everyone does a test at the same time. Group A, let me see your test results, bring them up. And it could be like, wait, you could get 20% or you could get 100%. But the response from the teacher was, wow, you are amazing. You must be so smart. You're so talented. You're the greatest thing that's walked these corridors of this school. You are the best. Okay. And the kids are like walking back to their chair with a big glowing feeling, I'm fucking mustard. Okay. That's the attitude that they take. The second category kids, as I say, have the same test. And what they get feedback on is effort. I can see what you did here. You were working hard. I think there is so much more you can do here, because I believe that you can work harder at this. You know, so the difference in the response was, you've succeeded in category A, and category B, you're on a journey and you can do better.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the setup. The next day, the teacher walks in and says, right, kids, everybody who is in group A over here, everyone in group B is here. Which of you lot want to take a test? All the group B hands went up. No problem. Not many of group A went up. Then when the teacher said, I'm going to let you take the same test you took yesterday, a couple of hands went down in group A, because their mindset is so fragile that they had reached the pinnacle. What the hell happens if you fail?
Yeah.
They were more worried about the result than the process of trying. And I think it was a really interesting experiment, and lots of people have taken this into sport and into business, about actually failure is a learning opportunity, because until you fail, you don't know where your weak spots are. And you've cited it in football and sport and those sorts of things. But if you're of the right mindset that I can grow and get better out of this, whether it's a job interview or something far more serious, like, you know, an attempt at sobriety,
Yeah.
then you will succeed. But it is about the mindset. And I think sometimes defining failure can often be described as like a terminal event. And what I mean by that is society's opinion of, say, let's say a celebrity who is who has been sober for 5 years is then seen out on the piss,
Yeah.
that's an absolute failure.
Yeah.
And they're failed at being sober. And
Yeah.
actually, there's no point trying anymore. That's just who you are. That's who you are as a person. Whereas, there is so much around people, places, opportunities, circumstances, all of those things that are, some of them are controllables and some of them are not. And actually, to get to 5 years should be considered a success.
Definitely. And it's that point, isn't it? That failure or failing to achieve something, there in failure there is deemed to be no achievement, but really, in reality, you are achieving something up to that point where you don't quite take that last step. Going up Everest, however high Mount Everest is, if you get to within 200-300 foot of the top, you've achieved a lot.
Yeah.
But when you radio down to say, I'm turning around, I'm going to make the decision to turn around and, live. And by the time you get back down, that radio message has probably been relayed to people further down the mountain that Stuart or a person failed to get to the top of Everest. Not that they spent 3 months preparing and then two days trekking to get within 200 foot of the highest point in the world. It's a big example I'm using here, but there is success right up to that point. And you could also argue that choosing to turn around in a situation like that, or choosing a decision for your own welfare or for the welfare of others, is a success in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the actually the Everest example is a really good one. Have you seen the program on Netflix, 12 Peaks? Is it 12 Peaks? 7 Peaks?
14.
14?
No, I haven't, but I have a small interest in Everest. I've watched plenty of sort of documentaries around that genre, but I haven't actually seen 14 Peaks.
So I won't spoil it for you, but it's essentially it's an ex-Gurkha who wants to climb the 14 peaks that are over whatever it is, 8,000 meters high, and he wants to do it in a 7-month window. But there are a couple of occasions where he's coming down these big mountains and he finds people in trouble. Now he's got multi-million-pound sponsorships to support him over to get him where he needs to go and support him. He's got loads of people relying on him. He's got, cameras following him, all of that. And on 2 separate occasions, he finds people on the mountain.
Yeah.
And he stays with them.
Yes.
And he puts their welfare and their lives in front of what would be perceived as kind of one of the greatest climbing achievements ever.
Yeah.
In order to help somebody. But that runs the risk of jeopardizing the outcome of what he wants to do, which would be considered a failure. If he doesn't make it, he's failed, as opposed to he saved the life of somebody else. It's and I think you're absolutely right. Kind of getting 200 meters from the summit of Everest, in the outside world or within that mindset discussion, defining what success is before you can then regard something as failure, I think is really important at a personal level. We're not going to be able to do anything from a media and societal point of view, but if you're entering into a new venture and you understand what would be satisfying from a success point of view, you can then understand what failure is, what real failure is.
Yeah, and it's sort of looking at it in a smaller sort of sense. You look at, someone who might be starting out with setting up their own business, for example. And the reality of starting your own business is that probably in the first 5 years, you're gonna break even. You're not going to make much money. But if you could pick up, return customers and be trading 5 years on, you might have no more money in the bank than you did. So society, you might be driving that first van you bought to start the business. You may not have afforded the new windows in your house that you want that you would have been able to do on your potentially on your old salary. But compared to 90% of small businesses that started 5 years ago when you did, who might not be trading anymore, you are a success. But you're driving an old banger. You haven't been able to do your house up, and you're probably eating chicken nuggets for your dinner. You are a success, and you will be going forward because you've put the effort in, but you won't be looked at. Your neighbours are probably talking behind their net curtains saying, look at the state of him. But really, you are successful, but you are not deemed a success. And it's strange.
Yeah, and again, I think that's walking into that, opening up your own business. What do you want your success to be? If you're doing it because you want to make millions, then there's quite if you haven't hit the £1 million mark in profit, then you might well consider yourself a failure. But if your measure for success is I want to provide for my family and live comfortably, and you're doing that, then that's success. That's absolutely success. But this kind of the American dream has permeated into the UK and Western society of, you've got to be the absolute best at everything, and there is no margin for mediocrity.
Yeah, well, this podcast, that we will never be deemed successful when you look at something like, or this podcast won't be deemed successful if you choose to look at viewing figures, charts compared to, other podcasts, other addiction recovery based podcasts or discussions that we're having. But the reality is that it is massively successful because we have reached numerous people and allowed them, either helped them through sort of discussions off camera with myself and yourself. We both have friends and people who have reached out to us, and we do that behind the scenes. But also, we've had the messages, I've had the messages on Twitter that it's something that me and you don't deem particularly significant within our chats, but has triggered something within an individual and allowed them to help themselves or help somebody close to them who is struggling with, be it an addiction or an anxiety issue, or even they might be concerned about anything in their life, but just seeing two grown men, dare I say reasonably intelligent men, sort of discussing things that men don't like to discuss, it has softened those boundaries somewhat. So that was a bit of waffle, wasn't it?
No, not at all. I think I was a little bit distracted by the fact that I think the podcast is probably the most successful in the Kingsdown area.
Yes, certainly in alcohol addiction recovery, I think we're number one in the Kingsdown addiction recovery charts.
Yeah.
Last time I checked.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, defining your success, I know that was massively tongue in cheek, but defining your success, you can find positives even in a small podcast in a very small area of a very small town in the southeast of England.
Yes. Yeah.
So there was something else that kind of came to mind around kind of the mindset and the kind of not giving up. It's the attitude or the response to failure that often defines us as well. So like we talk about the Carol Dweck research and the giving praise for effort, not outcome, and all the rest of it. But when you there has to be a level of resilience and tenacity to keep going when failure really is obvious in front of you. So what I mean by that is, there is a good story which is supposedly true around James Dyson, the vacuum cleaner inventor.
Yeah, I haven't got my rollable out.
Well, we wouldn't be able to see it in your forestry background.
It's hidden under my hoodie.
Yeah. But so the tale goes, there were more than 5,000 attempts before he got his at making a vacuum cleaner without a bag, before he was able to sell one and get it made and all the rest of it. 5,000.
Yeah.
I know what I'm like when I put up a shelf. If it doesn't quite go where I want it to, that's it. I'm done, because it's not my forte. But actually, it's a shameful, really, that I should be able to put up a shelf or do some basic DIY around the house, and then someone like
No,
Tyson.
don't be ashamed for I don't even try. Don't. All men out there, you shouldn't have to put shelves up.
Okay.
All shelves matter.
Why do we need shelves anyway? But to keep going, that level of it's not just tenacity and resilience to kind of go, that hasn't worked, but for 5,000 occasions, he's learned something new to make the next one better.
Yeah, and I think that is a fantastic example, isn't it? And we're not talking, we're talking about a man who is now sort of being held in the highest esteem, within British people, up there with Brunel and his bridges, etc. Now, but with his during that time of development, he wasn't a multimillionaire who had 24 hours a day to commit to. He wasn't a successful man starting a new project. He was trying to get his first project off the ground, and that, I don't know, what that is, some mindset, and obviously that's the mindset of what we would sort of look at. Something I watch a lot of sport. That would be like the elite sporting mindset to me. These guys who never give up. But it's funny, and sort of going, I'm experiencing it a bit now with my 5.5-year-old daughter, and she probably gets a bit of it from me, but she doesn't like not winning.
Mm-hmm.
And I will share a quote with everyone, or a little sledging the other day. She's the lightest one. She was sledging against adults and a 14-year-old. She kept not finishing first in the sledging. It wasn't a race, but in her mind, it was a race. And she was getting quite grumpy, and she does get quite grumpy. So the other day, she decided, after the third race that she hadn't won, that wasn't even a race, she said, I'm going to sledge on my own now to make sure I win.
Yeah.
So, but the other, when we play anything we do around the house at the minute, the point that you just made, that if she doesn't win the first hand of Uno, she tries to put the cards back in the box. She doesn't want to play anymore. So I think at that age, I don't think that's something she will have picked up from me. I'd like to think I wasn't quite so competitive with her. But I think we are probably all a little bit pre-programmed. I might be wrong in saying that, but I don't know if that's learned behavior from someone at 5.5 years of age. I know me and my two brothers were very similar, but that was a competitive household. But I have been trying to work out how I can convince her to keep playing something as simple as Uno, but reminding her that she's not always going to win, but it's not clicking at the minute.
Yeah.
And it's, from a parenting point of view, it's quite frustrating. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, no, and I think that's, you're not alone. And I've got 14 and 11-year-old almost. And winning is a learnt behavior, because it's societal, it's on podcasts, it's people sing about it, make music about it, it's on TV, movies, all of that sort of stuff written. And there's no getting away with, everyone likes to win, everyone likes that feeling of winning, and it starts so early. Doesn't matter how many participation medals they give out on sports day, everyone still likes to win, everyone gets that. But it is a real challenge, and it's a challenge mindset wise for yourself as a parent to kind of really focus in on, you were so close there, or that was great, I could see you concentrating, I'm so impressed with that. And actually, when they do win, it's like, okay, very well done. You acknowledge the win, but you don't give it the same big up that you would do with a second or third place, but the effort was there.
Yeah.
And actually, it's kind of parenting skills with Stu and Phil.
Or bad ones.
Or bad ones. Yeah.
Sledge on your own, guaranteed victory.
Yeah, you play sledge on your own. That's it. But yeah, it's challenging because you're trying to institute something at home, which is kind of good, healthy attitude towards participation,
Yeah.
but then you get mixed messages in the rest of the world. So yeah, I mean, I think the good thing for Junior Butler is that there isn't much snow where you are. So this is a once a year issue.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully once a year. That'd be nice.
That would be nice. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Where else do you want to go with that? Anywhere else that you want to go with that?
Well, I think we've covered a lot of stuff, haven't we? In that time, and I think it might be good to throw a small sort of addiction recovery. And I just want to sort of shout Becca out. Becca, who we had on the podcast a few weeks back, and she's tweeting a lot at the moment, and she recently tweeted about how how her addiction does define her now, in a positive way, and how my addiction also it is what defines me in the now. um, and there was so much negativity in the build up to me stopping drinking, and Becca and any other addict. But I think we are so, people who overcome adversity, and we all do that, don't we? Every day, really. But people who are able to overcome things like addiction, and addiction nearly killed me, and it pretty much it has a good go at killing a lot of people every day. But through that comes some great strength, and I think it would just be so good to be able to focus on giving people, listening to them, and being able, hopefully, allowing people to have a platform like me and you have created with this. I just sort of reach out to anyone who's listening to this, sort of share it out there, because there is, we've put a lot of content out, but there's a lot of, Becca doing great stuff in Canada. And if you find Adam Coleman on Twitter, I'll post his link again. But there are so many strong people out there who would have been written off, but are now doing fantastic things within their small communities. What Adam's doing within It Starts Monday, Curtis Woodhouse is forever retweeting Adam's little videos, and I'm now following a couple of guys, big old guys who are trying to lose weight, but just watching them each day on Twitter putting their videos out, it's inspiring to me.
Yeah.
And it's given me another kick up the backside. So keep sharing this sort of stuff, guys, and there is good to come out of bad stuff, isn't there?
There absolutely is. You've said something a couple of times which I just want to pick up on as just to explore a little bit, where you'd said about alcoholism defining you.
Yeah.
And I just want to, how comfortable you are with that kind of, I'm not going to necessarily call it a label, but moniker almost of being defined as an alcoholic, where how comfortable you are with that.
I am very comfortable with it now. And I think probably I never had a problem. We've discussed it before, that I was always quite, even from when I came out of hospital, I had admitted I was an alcoholic, through AA. I admitted I was powerless when alcohol was involved.
Yeah.
And I will always describe myself as an alcoholic. And I am happy, I'll probably never walk around with it on a T-shirt or a hat. But I mean, I don't have it on my Twitter handle. But anyone who clicks onto my Twitter page would very quickly see that I'm happy. I am a recovering alcoholic. I am happy with it, and I am comfortable. Some people aren't, and I have noticed within my sort of social circle, all of my friends are, are very supportive, but some people on the peripheral aren't quite so comfortable with my comfort.
Yeah.
And I don't know I don't know why that is. It's strange, isn't it? Because I don't know if some people, we discussed, didn't we, with, I think it was on the Becca podcast, we had that brief discussion where I have to stop saying sorry for the bad things I did in my active addiction. And I don't know if I think a lot of people, not a lot of people, that's the wrong thing to say. I retract that bit. Some people, I will always be remembered for. I will always be Stu of 10 to 15 years ago, troublemaking Stu who used to drink too much, voiced his opinions and didn't care who he upset. Now I'm not that Stu anymore, and sadly I had to go through a lot of pain and cause a lot of pain to get to this new Stu, and I am a new person. I still have a lot of not good traits, but I have a few positive ones now. So I am very comfortable with it. But there are still certain parts of society who will never be comfortable with recovering addicts, I think, doing positive work or trying to do positive work.
Yeah. And so the reason I was asking was that, so through my journey with getting diagnosed as autistic, it kind of turned your world upside down, and perhaps in the polar opposite way to your experience, in that I've kind of had an awakening about who I am.
Yeah.
Kind of genetically, I guess, if that's the right word, biologically, and understand the world much more because of my diagnosis, as opposed to, I think you understand the world much more because you're not drinking.
Yeah.
But because of that difference and the way that I've taken it on with some enthusiasm to try and learn about it and also speak up about some of the inequalities and differences that people experience, some people have said to me, you shouldn't let your autism define you. And since you've been diagnosed, you're a bit of a flag waver for it. And that sort of thing, which I find I can't disagree more with it, I think, because being autistic is part of my identity.
Yeah,
and
100%.
I would never use it as a reason for poor behavior or laziness or just being a bad human. But there are challenges that I have in my life because I am autistic. And I'm at an age now where I have an understanding and able to articulate better why those challenges are so unfair when the world is set up for people who are not like me.
Yeah.
But I just found it really interesting that, like you say, it's people indirectly I see every day and people that I know and love and, understand a little bit about the journey that I've had to go through are very comfortable with my comfort in being autistic and talking about being autistic. But then there's some on the periphery that are just a little bit like, you've changed.
Yes, but you have changed, I'm sure. And sadly, in their small minds, dare I say, you have changed for the worse in their very narrow, single-minded, blinkered view and opinion. I mean, it's absolute bullshit if you ask me. But I get the same.
Yeah.
I get the same subtle vibes, I think, that you're describing. And I think there's two, or there's one word that I think it's probably your autism diagnosis and mine obviously isn't a diagnosis. Mine is an acceptance that I am an alcoholic who's powerless to control myself when I'm drinking alcohol. But in that acceptance, I have so much more clarity. And I think clarity is the word.
Yeah.
And I used another word replying to a very brief thing on Twitter. What has someone asked a question on Twitter? You know, what has your it was a podcast account? What has your podcast allowed you to learn about yourself, or use a word to describe what your podcast is? And accountability was a word that or the one word I posted on that. And I am now I have much more clarity with my life. And the good thing that I've found using that word is that when I fuck up, which I do quite a lot, not in huge scales of what I used to do when I was drinking, but when I mess things up, I understand why. I learn from them, and I try not to make the mistake again. Mm-hmm. And that probably links to accountability. You know, I would wake up, you know, and in the past, my wife would tell me, "Oh, you were trying to have a wee on the landing the other night," because I was pissed out of my face, and I would just try and shrug it off, and I would be able to instantly forget about it, and in my head blame something else. You know, I was just sleepwalking, or bad day at work, probably didn't sleep very well, blah blah blah. But now I have that clarity for the world, and that allows me to be far more accountable for my actions, but both in a hugely positive sense. You know, they're both positive things, and I wouldn't be, you know, we wouldn't, well, if I wasn't sober, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. We all know I would probably be dead. You might not be dead had you not been diagnosed with your autism, but you wouldn't probably be the happier human being you are now, Phil. That the understand that it has allowed you.
Yeah, exactly. I think I might well have fallen into a bit of a mental health pit, because, you know, constantly being challenged and not understanding why your world is so difficult, assuming that everybody else is having the same challenges, but actually that's not the case, and constantly feeling like you're swimming upstream is exhausting. And at some point you burn out.
Yes, so you assume that everyone else is stronger and able to deal with the things that you are not able to deal with. I'm not going to compare my anxiety to your autism, but I know the feelings I've had having anxious or depressive episodes, and I have just not been able to deal with possibly the simplest tasks. You know, I always used to refer back to the task of putting the bins out, and the times that I couldn't do it. And you used to think to yourself, everyone else's bins are out, and I can't walk my bins 5 yards up to the top of the drive. Mm-hmm. How is everyone else? Well, the truth is, the other people on my street aren't dealing with anxiety on that given day. I cut you off there, sorry, man.
No, you're absolutely right. I think the autism and the anxiety kind of, they go hand, they're kind of a vicious circle that goes with it. The challenges that you face as an autistic can lend themselves to really driving an anxiety that could be supported better with kind of, you know, either workplace or societal changes that may just make your life a little bit easier. So while anxiety and autism are not comparable, they sit in the same sphere, because most autistics will have a history with anxiety for sure.
And at a point, I'm going to interrupt again, because you just made a very, very good point, and not many people listen to this, but hopefully if people do, what you just said about making life slightly easier. Mm-hmm. I recently was in a situation where it was, I won't describe where, but it was outlined to me that everyone had to be treated the same in a sense of fairness.
Yeah.
And I can't get my head around it, because that doesn't solve anything. And in the environment that I'm discussing, it's actually not that hard to treat people differently, and you would get so much more out of people if you did treat them differently.
Yeah.
In a sense that we are all individuals, and yes, we can't, we can't pamper to everyone's every need, but if we were as a society potentially in a work-based environment, if you were a little bit willing to understand people's personal needs, I think there is so much more to be gained from individuals within the work environment, the social environment, the small club level sporting environment. Understanding people that little bit better, I think there's so much more to be got from individuals if they are made to feel comfortable.
Yeah, no, it's a proper old school bullshit attitude to, in order to be fair, everyone has to be treated the same when you've got a room full of different people. When you say it in such simple terms, it makes zero sense at all. So being able to, and it's not even accommodate, it's just flex your style a little bit.
Yeah.
Just flex that style to, whatever it is, whatever your circumstances. But for me, there are just small adjustments in my workplace or at home that need to be made that just make my life easy.
Yeah.
Easier. And this is part of an issue that I think is ongoing, is, everyone's happy to say that they're inclusive and they want to, open arms and all the rest of it, until you ask them to do something different. So you ask them to change what they're used to doing, then it becomes a problem. Because, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and you can't do X, Y, Z. It's just like, okay, so it is a problem then.
Yeah, that's how we've always done it.
Yeah.
That's why everyone's always been miserable.
Yes, and that's why you keep losing people out of your organization or whatever the situation is. Yeah, absolutely.
But that's potentially a whole other podcast going forward.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, well, let's think about planning one like that. We, though, have reached our self-imposed time limit. We're just tiptoeing over it. So we've rushed to that finish line. As we always say, it just flies by. But so as we wrap up, let's just do the reminders. Henry Weston's old mate, you can email us on hwomthepod@gmail.com. We obviously always want you to like, rate and review. Much easier to do, I found, on YouTube. The episode, you can give a thumbs up individually and write a comment, and we're very happy to hear feedback. But also on your podcast provider, there will be an option to rate the show overall. So we'll be very grateful if you could give us a half decent rating at least. And any other comments, any subject matter you want us to discuss, we'll be very happy to do that.
Yes.
You want to finish, Stu?
No, I was just going to say, at some point in the near future, we've always said we are never ever going to try and monetize the YouTube or the podcast, and we are not. But I will be setting up a link that will, and we would just post it with the podcast. We're not asking for money. We won't be asking for donations, but it will allow anyone who wants to or might want to make a small financial donation towards the podcast. It's going to be this coffee app, where it simply allows you to donate the cost of a cup of coffee towards the podcast. Me and Phil and all our guests, we happily give up our time, and we will continue to do so. But going forward, the quality of the podcast will be able to be improved with hardware and software, microphones, lights, and we take that cost wholeheartedly on ourselves. And we will, but if there are people out there, we've put 30 or 40 hours of content out, and there might be people who think, I'd like to give these guys a helping hand. So please don't view that as a negative going forward. I won't bombard anyone with it, but there will be the option to just make small donation. And it's not really a donation to me or Phil. It's a donation to the podcast and the future of the pod. The podcast isn't going to die if no one donates, but if you would like to, there will be an option.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think if the production value can improve from the camouflage setup that we've got currently, then that is a real benefit.
I may never wear this Puma hoodie ever again.
Okay, let's wrap it there. Stuart, it's been really good to see you. I'm glad you had a safe time in France skiing and or snowboarding or whatever it is that you did, sledging, beating your daughter at sledging. You mean.
Yes.
Yeah, good to have you back, and I hope you're feeling a bit better soon.
Thank you, mate. Bonsoir, mon ami.
Indeed. Nostar.